Welcome to today's webinar. It's hosted by the National Center for Pyramid Model Innovations. My name is Ben Reapy with NCPMI. This webinar is part of the Within the Framework webinar series. And today's topic is For State Leaders by State Leaders, Free Resources and Lessons Learned for Implementing, Scaling Up, and Sustaining the Pyramid Model with Fidelity. I'd like to thank our panelists from Wisconsin, Lana Schuyler Nanide and Julie Bechtel, Katasha Williams and Dawn Meskel, Sherry Britt Williams from North Carolina, Hope Beazle, and Sarah Hansen from Minnesota. So thank you all so much. And of course, our esteemed Barbara Smith and myself, well, not the esteemed Ben, but here we are. We're so excited to have you here today. We're hoping that by the end of today's session, that we can review the lessons learned from Pyramid Model state leaders on scale-up sustainability approach and some of the free resources that we've got available for you. One of the things that all of us have agreed on when discussing this topic is that we're hoping that you leave feeling reassured wherever you are, however you're doing, feel reassured and validated as you hear about some of the lessons learned from these great leaders, and that you can come away with a couple of considerations for equity as you plan to implement and scale up. So we're going to get going with Barbara Smith, and thank you guys for joining us today.
Thanks, Ben. I just want to review a few of the resources that are available to you, and I'm going to do it very quickly because all of it is on the NCPMI website on the state implementation page. So I want to review them, give a little basic foundation before turning it over to our state leaders, but our state leaders are going to have the lion's share of the time. They will be referring back to some of these resources, how they've used them, and also our approach to statewide implementation with Fidelity. So the first thing I want to start with, because it is very foundational, is the State Implementation Guide, or as we refer to it, the SIG. It's on the ECTA Early Childhood Technical Assistance website. It was jointly produced by NCPMI and ECTA, and it's based on all the years of working with states and implementing evidence-based practices, including the DEC recommended practices and the pyramid model. I want to start with this because it's foundational to everything that you'll hear the speakers refer to. It is our approach to statewide implementation with Fidelity. And Fidelity is the very important concept here. So we use implementation science, which tells us the kinds of structures we need to have in place to make sure that the practitioner at the child level and the family at the child level is implementing our practices, and in this case, the pyramid model with Fidelity, because that way we can hope and be sure that the outcomes that are promised to us through the evidence will be seen. So the statewide implementation guide, you can get to it from the NCPMI state page, or you can go straight to the ECTA site. But this is the home page, and it shows you the important parts of our approach. First of all, there's an introduction that talks about the years of experience of working with states that resulted in our describing what we find really works in states. And part of that is the second item there, the essential support structures. And I'm going to talk about that in a little more detail in a minute. The stages of implementation. So we have taken implementation science, and in the statewide implementation guide, we've translated that into early childhood concepts and language. And we use the stages of implementation within each of the 4 essential structures. And then there's key resources and tools. Lots of examples with the pyramid model embedded within the state implementation guide. Next slide, Ben. So the 4 essential structures that we have found are absolutely essential to statewide implementation of the pyramid model with Fidelity is, first of all, the state leadership team, a cross-sector team that works together over years. And you're going to hear a lot about that from our state leaders. So that state leadership team is the first essential structure. The state leadership team establishes program implementation coaches. Those are people around the state available to programs to coach the programs, not individuals. They coach programs through the implementation and sustainability of the pyramid model. Program implementation coaches. Implementation and demonstration sites. So the state leadership team, through the program implementation coaches, brings on programs to implement the pyramid model with Fidelity. And of those, they choose a few demonstration sites because what? We believe what we can see, right? So people can go visit these demonstration sites and hear what it took to get to Fidelity with the pyramid model and the outcomes and the excitement the program has about that. And finally, the fourth structure is data decision-making. Throughout these structures, there are data, there are tools, and there are ways of using that data to improve implementation, sustainability, and scale up. Next slide, Ben. All of that is embedded in the roadmap to statewide implementation of the pyramid model. It is highlighted on the NCPMI state page, and it's truly the roadmap. Many of us spent a long time putting this together on all of our lessons learned and our resources to literally build a roadmap of statewide implementation and sustainability and scale up. So if you don't have the roadmap, go to the state implementation page. And because I'm old-fashioned, download it. I really think having a nice hard copy that you can read no matter where you are, and every member of your state leadership team should have this because it is our roadmap to implementing statewide. And it takes all the four essential structures and thank you, Carrie, and embeds it within the implementation stages that we know from implementation science. Next slide, Ben. And then, of course, there's the state leadership team benchmarks of quality. The state leadership team benchmarks of quality is, I like to think, the job description of the state leadership team. It is what the state leadership team should be doing daily, weekly, monthly. It's a self-assessment that we recommend states do initially twice a year. And then as the state leadership team is sustained, once a year. You're going to hear a lot more about that from Wisconsin. So the state leadership team benchmarks of quality, self-assessment guides what the state leadership team does. There are there are 3 or 4 other benchmarks of quality, but one is this community-wide benchmarks of quality. And we developed that because more and more states are starting to look at the community level for implementation that helps to sustain and really build a coordinated effort at the community level. So that's a community-wide benchmarks of quality. Both of those are on the state page. Next slide, Ben. This is a checklist of sustainability features for the state leadership team. From everything we've learned over our 20 years of implementing, we have learned that there are certain things, certain features, certain actions that state leadership teams need to engage in to maintain that initial excitement. And quite frankly, without that initial excitement and initial passion, state leadership teams, just like any group of people, will drift away to the louder, squeakier wheels. But we find that if you follow these features, thanks, Carrie. If you follow these features, you will find a much more likelihood of your individual state leadership team members maintaining their commitment, their passion, and their excitement, which is absolutely going to have to take place because this work is years of work. It also takes into account when members have to go off the team, how to bring on new members that maintain that excitement. Next slide. The State Leadership Team Equity Inventory. We're very excited about this tool. It's going up on the website as we speak. It was field tested in the spring with a lot of state leadership teams. And what it's structured by the 4 essential structures so that considerations, questions, improvements, and actions around equity by each of the 4 essential structures: state leadership team, program implementation coaches, sites, and data systems. Considerations around equity and then actions around equity within each of those 4 essential structures is at the forefront of this work for the state leadership team. So this tool will be going up on the state page, on the NCPMI state page very soon. Thank you, Mira. Okay, and the Pyramid Nation. So there's a tab on the NCPMI website called the Pyramid Nation. Under that tab, there is a tab for Pyramid States. And this is a place where state leadership teams, state leaders can submit their own resources, their own products, their own resources. So this is a great page. You can go and literally see the tools, the reports, the other resources that states themselves have created and post to this page. Next slide, Ben. We are uploading at the request of several states some infographics that states can use to tell the story of why the pyramid model is important and the outcomes of using the pyramid model. This infographic is currently up on the state page, and it's an infographic that tells the story that providers tell about what happens when you implement the pyramid model. So that's one. We have another one being prepared to go up that talks about what families have to say about the outcomes of the pyramid model. So states can use these as the national story. They can also use them as a template for their own stories. Next slide, then. Finally, our partner, the Pyramid Model Consortium, is like the implementation legs on the ground. So NCPMI is funded and supported to create national resources and provide national sharing and to learn from states and post new resources and get the word out. Pyramid Model Consortium exists to help states implement the pyramid model with Fidelity. So you can contract with the consortium for training for the full-blown 4 essential structure implementation model, for family engagement, support, training, and technical assistance is what the Pyramid Model Consortium is all about. So that's their website with their resources. Okay, I'm excited to turn this over now to the people who are really doing the work. Julie and Lana from Wisconsin, you all are next.
Thank you, Barbara. Lana, I'm Julie Betchkel. I work for the Wisconsin Alliance for Infant Mental Health as a full-time Wisconsin Pyramid Model Coordinator. And Lana and I are delighted to highlight some of the pieces of our good work in Wisconsin that we feel have lent to our sustainability. The work has progressed, much like our logo has progressed over the course of 11 years. Then next slide. So in those 11 years that we've been working to implement the pyramid model framework, over 12,000 individuals have engaged in some type of pyramid model training. Our coordination funding has varied from 0.28 FTE to our current 7.8 FTE. Next, we have 66 programs that are primarily group childcare, Head Start, or public pre-K that have 142 sites that are working to implement the framework program-wide. And that work is primarily supported by 14 external coaches or program coaches. So that's a little bit of the context of our work. Next slide. We, since the beginning, have been using the state leadership team benchmarks of quality. We do that benchmark of quality rating as a state leadership team once a year in October. You'll see that we started with an earlier version of the benchmarks of quality and then morphed our work into using the new benchmarks of quality. As coordinators, we compile evidence for the ratings, and we use every October as an opportunity to reflect on the good work that's happened, to celebrate the good work that's happened, and to meaningfully plan for addressing all key critical elements of statewide implementation. Next slide. For many years, we met monthly as a leadership team. And then in response to a cut in funding in 2018, we redefined our leadership team structure, and we defined core team roles, responsibilities, and we shrunk the size of the core team. This core team now meets quarterly. And the core team consists of leaders who are most connected to the action items that result from the benchmarks of quality. The core team makes key decisions about implementation, including actions related to the equity inventory. And then we devised, we reconfigured and added a larger statewide advisory team that consists of individuals who lead work that is connected to statewide implementation of the framework. And then this advisory team meets once in fall and then again in spring to advise and help us celebrate our implementation actions. And the advisory team anchors to the state leadership team guidance on the prevention of suspension and expulsion document. Next slide, please. About 6 months into our implementation, pyramid model practitioner training became embedded into our quality rating improvement system. In Wisconsin, it's called Youngstar. So we had a pretty quick need for training, and we developed a trainer approval process. We currently have 97 trainers who are employed by 45 agencies. And these trainers not only train in pyramid model, but they train in other quality improvement practices, which we believe has led to a nice blending of integrating pyramid model within other structures as well. These trainers provide training in the gold box, and then as pyramid model coordinators, we hold tightly to the training strands in the red box. So that includes training for program-wide implementation. WEAIM provides the contracted external coaches for our program-wide implementing sites. Next slide. In response to some recent funding, we've structured our work to align with Wisconsin's preschool development grant regions. And we use the regional model to coordinate the trainer approval process. Next, if you can animate. And we hold regional communities of practice for any professional working to support implementation of the pyramid model framework within their communities. And so these professionals are Wisconsin pyramid model trainers, our program coaches, our practitioner coaches, infant mental health consultants, leadership team members, program leadership team members, and state leadership team members. And we are thrilled that this regional level work is supported by 4 new well, they're not so new anymore, 4 regional pyramid model leads. And these leads assist with making connections and developing content and supporting program coaches, program leadership teams, and they facilitate the regional communities of practice. So we really are trying to use a relational model as we think about supporting the framework throughout the state. Next slide. Wisconsin has been invested from the very beginning in using data to tell the story of implementation. We started collecting the benchmarks of quality from programs using the Excel spreadsheets, and then decided to build our own database. Next slide, or if you can animate, Ben, thank you. And what we learned using data, that all early care and education systems need support to examine their program level elements, and that all programs are capable of making great gains with program-wide implementation. A year ago, we shifted to using the National Pyramid Model Implementation Data System, or the PID system. And we are very excited to be able to pull data with several clicks, aggregate statewide data with several clicks. We're very interested and leaning into being able to use data to tell the story in another way, while remembering that data points represent real people doing real work in real ways. Next slide. Our implementation focus has always included both positive solutions for families and PWE. And we provide training for facilitators every time we hold an implementation academy. So every time we bring on new program-wide sites, we also hold positive solutions and PWE trainings. In 2016, we revised the Positive Solutions for Families content to include activities for children to complete while their parents were in the sessions. And we are relaunching how we're collecting data on the effectiveness of the Positive Solutions for Families content. The intentional implementation of PWE in Wisconsin was highlighted in a 0 to 3 journal article describing the powerfully significant impact of PWE play groups. We want to learn more about families' experiences and understandings of program-wide implementation. So we created a family survey that provides information to programs to make decision, and then allows us to have aggregate data in a summary for our state team. We're going to use that data to provide celebrations and also to enhance our content. Next slide. There's some of the data. Even in the very lean funding years, we've always created an annual report that again allowed for celebration of the good work. It allowed for summarizing and describing the importance of why we do this work. We post the annual reports. We have a shared public state leadership team updates page, and we always post it to the NCPMI Pyramid Model States work pages as well. We've moved from having very wordy annual reports to more graphically based annual reports. That was definitely a lesson learned for us. Next slide. In 2016, we were very fortunate to have an independent evaluation of our pyramid model work in Wisconsin that showed stunning results for kids who were in risk. It described the significant reduction in problematic behaviors and increase in social skills. We have utilized the information from that evaluation to help, again, tell the story of the effectiveness, why it's important to stick with and do this work together. We have 3 large community efforts in Wisconsin. They collect and share their data with us. Our next steps will be to really build our capacity to to support more communities to use the community benchmarks of quality as well. That's a priority for us. And then next, if you could animate, Ben, thank you. And then as a nonprofit organization, we're able to use the information from the study, the data that we have, and the results from our implementation sites to support our programs to help educate their policymakers. Next slide.
So speaking of educating policymakers, we were fortunate enough to be invited to do a testimony at the Legislative Children's Caucus in 2018. And the focus of it was infant mental health, social emotional well-being, expulsion, all of the key hot topics. And I think one of our strengths is that we're able to connect the dots. One of our really efforts is to help integrate the idea of infant and early childhood mental health and the pyramid model framework and help others understand how related and connected they are. And so working at the Alliance for Infant Mental Health, where our very vision is to make sure that we support social and emotional wellness, that we really want every infant and young child to reach their fullest potential, which we know is only possible through responsive relationships. We feel that we're at a really good spot to promote the work of the pyramid model. And so as Barbara was saying, how important it is to tell the story, how important it is to showcase the work. So the work is important. You have to have data, you have to have demonstration sites, you have to have testimonials, but you also have to make sure that you tell about these gems. And so you go from meeting to meeting and you show up and you raise your hand and you ask questions and you share what you have, and you do it year after year after year, and year after year after year you get invited to other places and other circles, right? And so, which is really exciting. And I think we try to capture some of the groups that we sit on and in, and how we always try to connect the dots and bring it back to, well, what might be a solution? What might be a way out? How are we with the children and families? What strategies do we use? Do we implement? What do we already have? And we do it with both passion and integrity. And we also know that it works. So, so next slide, please. Much like many other states, Wisconsin has Early Childhood Advisory Council, a council that advises to the governor of Wisconsin. The council meets 4 times a year, and at the end of the year, the council produces recommendations to the governor as the governor considers funding. And the funding in Wisconsin is on a biennium basis. So once every 2 years, we provide a report to the governor that says, these are the key areas. This is what we believe should be funded in Wisconsin, in Wisconsin's budget. And so I am a member of the council. And so it was very exciting that for this current biennium that technically started on July 1st of 2021, and it's a 2-year cycle, we were able to put recommendation for the expanded funding for the social and emotional development, training and coaching, and with naming of the pyramid model. So that was very exciting. And when our governor proposed his budget, that was in his budget. It didn't quite happen for us yet. But there was a clear recommendation from the governor of the state of Wisconsin, and there was an allocation for social and emotional training and coaching in his budget, which is a big deal for us. Again, it hasn't happened yet, but it is also a visibility, right? It is also something that people talked about, even if they struck it out, still they maybe have talked about it, or maybe they have seen it. And again, we're staying hopeful and optimistic that good things will happen. Next slide, please. So again, an opportunity to speak about the work, to promote it, to showcase it, led to just a cascade of events where we really have now support of the Wisconsin's First Lady, Mrs. Evers. So right there at the bottom, you see our First Lady at one of the implementation sites reading a book. And on the top, you see we have been visiting a number of pyramid model implementation sites, and it was exciting because it was a really powerful group of people from our state departments, from the Office of Children's Mental Health. And so being able to take Mrs. Evers and the key policymakers and leaders and administrators to showcase and show them what classrooms look like, what teachers are saying, so they could have a little bit of taste. And it's such a win-win because they feel that they are touring most beautiful, wonderful programs that work and they you know, are impactful and effective. And it's such a token of appreciation and acknowledgement for the program and the teachers and the children. I mean, there was just such excitement and joy. So again, Mrs. Evers chose social and emotional learning, early social and emotional learning as one of her key initiatives. And we're very excited about that. And again, that's another way to talk about the work, to showcase it, to promote it, to have this kind of level of support. Wisconsin has Wisconsin's Office of Children's Mental Health. The office reports directly to the governor. And so again, the office director went on this tour as well. And what you are seeing here is also that pyramid model was showcased in their quarterly communication. So again, in every which way, telling a story, showing data, making sure that people remember, bringing it back to why are we doing this, and sharing the results is exceptionally important. It feeds the loop, and it's completely necessary to both sustain the work, to celebrate the work, to acknowledge the work, and to fund the work. And so I think the next slide just shows that what we've shared with you right now, and as I was hearing Julie saying and sharing our accomplishments, and that slide that has data over 10 years, which is pretty incredible. It truly is a dream come true, because it all started, right? Us meeting in living rooms and kitchens and coffee shops and hotel room where we stole, right, Wi-Fi, and then ate lunch just to make up for that. And this picture is probably, I don't know, 10 years old, 11 maybe, because there are Sesame Street characters, and my child is turning 17 next Tuesday. And so, right, using the child's easel and crayons to write our plans, right? But what I also want to point out how this, from what 10, 11 years ago was a bit of looking into the future, as there's a CDC recommendation there on the bottom that says booster. Just a little reminder there from the past. Just don't forget that. But I think we were talking about a booster session for our implementation site. So the point is, there are so many different ways, and there are so many different pathways, right? But it is persistence. It is really having incredible partners. I mean, I get to work with Julie Betchko, which is kind of a bit of a dream, but not a bit. It is a dream come true. And then we have, leads that regional leads, and we have incredible core leadership team. We have some members on our core team that stuck with us from the very beginning, from when we wrote the application, and we want to celebrate and acknowledge that too. So. Right, hanging on, not giving up, and remember to acknowledge and celebrate successes. That's the Wisconsin story. Thank you.
We did not have any questions yet for Wisconsin, but you guys can always type into the Q&A. They're hanging on and not giving up across the country, including Oregon. Excellent. All right, well, our folks from North Carolina.
Yes. Hi, I'm Sherry Britt Williams, presenting with my North Carolina colleagues, Katasha Williams and Dawn Meskel. Katasha and I work with the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill FPG Institute, and we provide leadership to the North Carolina Early Learning Network project, which includes a team of regional implementation coaches who provide implementation support for Pyramid in public preschool programs in North Carolina. And Dawn is one of the two Part B 619 co-coordinators for North Carolina. And here you see a map of North Carolina. We have a nice mix of areas that are rural, urban, indigenous, and everything in between. Our 2020 census demographic data shows that our state is 60% white, 20% Black, 11% Hispanic, 7% multiracial, 3% Asian, and 1% American Indian. And North Carolina has been implementing pyramid models since 2008. We have a total of about 1,050 preschool classrooms in the public school system. 35% of those classrooms are implementing a Fidelity pyramid model, which includes practitioner coaching support to reach Fidelity on the teapot. We continue to scale up within and across LEAs in the state by adding classrooms to the implementation each year. So when we consider all of the LEAs implementing pyramid model in North Carolina, whether they started way back in 2008 or they just started implementation this past year, LEAs across North Carolina have been implementing pyramid model for an average of 7 years. And in North Carolina this past year, we had around 120 coaches who coached teachers to Fidelity and also provided follow-up support to teachers already at Fidelity as needed. And this past year, 70 to 75% of all of the classrooms implementing pyramid model in North Carolina were at Fidelity as measured by the teapot. So now that you know a little about North Carolina's implementation, I'll pass the mic to Dawn Meskel to provide some key strategies we've implemented for sustainability and scale up in North Carolina.
Awesome. Thank you, Sherry. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm excited to join this panel to share a bit about our approach to sustainability through strategic funding and our cross-sector state leadership team, which are two important aspects of our IDEA Part B pyramid model implementation. So I'll start with our strategic funding approach. As Sherry noted, since about 2008, North Carolina has used a significant portion of our IDEA Part B 619 state set-aside funds to support pyramid model implementation as a key priority, focused on our values of inclusive practices and eliminating exclusionary discipline practices for all children, and particularly children with disabilities. This funding support is designed to intentionally leverage the 4 essential structures to support sustainability. So with regards to pyramid model implementation, we use our funding in 2 ways. First, we contract with the North Carolina Early Learning Network at UNC's Frank Porter Graham Child Development Institute. And then we also directly support the implementation needs of our participating school districts with funding allocations. So through our contract, the North Carolina Early Learning Network not only serves as our professional development network, but they also provide the support needed to create the 4 essential structures for implementation. So for instance, this team serves as our regional program implementation coaches. They support site implementation, and they provide the support and resources needed for data decision-making at the state level and at the local level. So right now, with sustainability in mind, we're being thoughtful about which school districts are funded and how they're funded, who's choosing to engage and who's not, and why. How are we considering turnover, lessons learned from COVID's impact on implementation, and so on. And we're really focused on ensuring that we're acting equitably as we think about funding plans and expectations. And I think Sherry's going to share a little bit more about our equity considerations, so I'll move on. Because I also wanted to briefly share about our cross-sector state leadership team as a key sustainability effort in North Carolina. So while we had what we called a leadership team in the past, as we reviewed our benchmarks of quality about 1.5 years ago, we realized we really needed to strengthen our approach to statewide leadership for several reasons. We didn't really have cross-sector representation, and we knew that other sectors in North Carolina were also implementing the pyramid model in some way. And these various efforts were very siloed. So for instance, the data that Sherry just shared about our implementation, that is only one of 3 implementing sectors in North Carolina. So just over a year ago, we re-envisioned our team to now be a true statewide cross-sector pyramid state leadership team. And this new team is inclusive of our state's key organizations that support early childhood education. And we're focused on ensuring collective and seamless implementation across all of our sectors. So you can see some of our state partners on the slide. I'll also add that we've been lucky to be able to access a technical assistance opportunity offered through NCPMI to help support this particular transition for our state. And that's been really invaluable for us. So I just want to put a little plug in for accessing those technical assistance supports when you can. So our new state leadership team has helped with sustainability through building awareness and investment in the pyramid implementation across the state and across our sectors. We've been very mindful about who's at this table and who's not. We know that state leadership team invitations are often role specific, but where and when we can, we are prioritizing a truly diverse team that values all perspectives, and we work to ensure the diversity of our team truly influences our work so that we're building the strongest action plans and commitments. And with this redeveloped team, I think we've sometimes felt, or at least I know I have as one of the facilitators, felt a sense of urgency to act quickly. But we've embraced that a slower and intentional approach is going to be much more beneficial for our sustainable and collective impact as we try to join multiple efforts in pyramid implementation. And so now I think I will pass it on to Katasha to share more about our professional development processes.
Thanks, Dawn. Yes, I get the opportunity to share about our PD considerations that really lend to sustainability in our state. You know, intentional. I've heard that word throughout our time together this afternoon, and I'm going to continue to say it because it really is a key to sustainability, and it's no less when it comes to our PD structure in North Carolina. So Dawn and Sherry both mentioned that we have a team, amazing team of 5 regional consultants, and they are geographically placed in their regions. I want you to put a pin there. I'm going to talk about the importance of that a little bit later. But one of the key roles, key functions of that job is really to design, develop, and provide professional development and ongoing supports. And with the purpose in mind of increasing the understanding and application of pyramid strategies and those practices to Fidelity, because that's key. So we are, again, intentional that the supports we provide are provided in the context of a cyclical, ongoing process. So you'll see on your screen now a graphic of that approach that we take. And we call this our approach to engaging professional development support to improve and change practices. So that for us is called our EPIC P cycle. And what we do is we take this approach in any of our offerings, from our universal practices or our foundations, our tier 2 trainer supports, our initial suite that we use to onboard new coaches, such as mindful coaching, TPOT, practice-based coaching. I know you all know that. We also use the same concept, not only for these major PD events, but also for ongoing supports. And in North Carolina, those ongoing supports include coaching webinars, regional coaching meetings that really build community. I think Julie may have mentioned this earlier as she was speaking. Also, we've had teacher focus groups. We also celebrate as well. That's a theme also that's so important in this work. And we celebrate by an annual pyramid summit that's really focused on implementation teams. It celebrates their lessons learned and successes. And we also think about our ongoing TA and coaching. So all of these things that we offer, these supports, these experiences are thought of in this context of the cyclical cycle that you see here. And for the sake of time, I'm going to compress some of the details, but I do hope that we give you enough to think about your own PD system as it relates to these concepts that we're going to mention. So the first component of our EPIC P cycle is all about needs analysis. And this is it. It sounds like what it is. It involves collecting and reviewing data, assessments, feedback, that really inform content, our context, and the way we deliver our PD supports. This information comes from multiple sources because, again, this work is supported by those 4 essential support structures. So you'll note that some of our sources include various perspectives, communication loops between the 4 structures, because that is key to making this work sustainable. The next component that we'll review is about design. And when we talk about design, it feels at the surface kind of straightforward. But in this component, it really is a multi-step process of using that needs analysis data to develop and plan PD supports. And this step really, it includes things such as design plans, timelines, development of objectives. We use Bloom's taxonomy, Gagne, principles of adult learning, you name it, we use it. And we put this all in there to really think about, again, that relational piece of how this is for our intended audience and how we are able to really meet their needs through design. And this component here, again, it's led by our team of implementation coaches that we have on site. And I reminded you to put a pin in the thought that they're geographically located. And this is where that comes into such great importance for us, because being geographically located, it means our teams, they live, they work, they are a part of the communities that are receiving these supports. And what we found is that it really lends itself to our activities being relevant, effective, and responsive to the needs of the field. So we're really able to tailor those supports to meet the needs. And then there's this experiences that you see here in the component, the 3rd component. And that really is about, again, those ongoing trainings, the consultation and the coaching that we provide as the North Carolina Early Learning Network. These are intentional, again, ongoing engagements that really support transfer and application of the content. So not just the content alone, but then the continuous support to really think about how to transfer that learning to practice. And then the final component of our EPIC cycle is all about evaluation. Again, that data tells the story. And this includes data from polls, surveys, discussions, stakeholder feedback, and it really is our way of operationalizing that design and the experiences that have been offered, because we use this to think about and assess the impact and the effectiveness of any PD that we've provided or ongoing supports that we've provided. And you'll notice here, then that data that we collect in this evaluation piece goes back up and feeds into the needs analysis. So the cycle continues. So really that cyclical process of thinking about our data, designing it, having ongoing supports and evaluating it, and then right back at it again. So I know, again, we've compressed a lot of the details here, but just wanted to be able to share that we've learned and that this has been really effective for us in thinking about all of our PD across the board. So I'm gonna pause there for the sake of time. I know we don't have much time left, but Sherry, are you ready to share some equity considerations?
I will. So thanks, Katasha. As we continue to plan for sustainability and scale up in North Carolina, we've learned over the years how important it is to be equity focused in all aspects of the implementation. So what I mean by that is that we've learned that sustainability and scale up require an acknowledgement that implementation looks differently in different contexts and communities. And while we operate from and aspire to a common set of benchmarks of quality, we know that inequities in resources and access across programs and communities require different types of supports and strategies for reaching those common benchmarks. So if we're not equity focused and we use a cookie cutter approach to implementation support, we'll never attain sustainability or scale up because we won't be giving adequate support to entire communities and populations, which will prevent us from implementing and sustaining and scaling statewide. So as we're thinking about the 4 essential support structures Barbara mentioned earlier, and the representation and function of those structures, we're also considering equity and representativeness. So here on the screen, you see some primary themes of consideration that we keep at the forefront of our planning and improvement cycles. we've learned that equitable representation on leadership and implementation teams related to each of the support structures is crucial, because we need leadership with lived experience and perspective that can authentically understand the context of our diverse communities and population through firsthand experience with the culture and community. We've also seen how effective disaggregating data can be to help us to identify inequities across specific populations, so that we then know how to partner with people representing those populations to better understand the context and culture and strategies for improving equitable experiences and ways to authentically evaluate the effectiveness of those strategies from the perspectives of people who identify with specific populations. And we've learned that interpretation of data is subjective and sometimes biased, and sometimes interpretation focuses on deficiencies of a community or population rather than investigating the context and systemic inequities that have set up the population for inequitable access, resources, and experiences. So having the diverse and representative perspectives at the table and focusing on how context and systemic inequities affect outcomes for specific populations help us to prioritize our supports to focus on equity, diversity, and inclusion. So this requires some intentional reflection on and sometimes interrogation of our system and procedures and processes to open our eyes to practices that support bias and inequity. And so we include in our professional development experiences discussions about culture and identity and how a better understanding of this can improve our success with sustaining and scaling pyramid practices statewide that result in better outcomes for children and families, however they identify culturally and wherever they may be located in North Carolina. So I'll stop there, and I think I'm passing the mic to Minnesota, unless we have some questions.
People cheering you on, and glad that you're disaggregating data. Minnesota, you are up.
Good afternoon, everybody. Sally and I are so excited about this opportunity. We always get super excited to be part of conversations like this because we ourselves learn so much from hearing experiences from other states. So Julie, we already want to email you something so that we can get access to one of your reports. North Carolina, you can probably expect an email from us soon. And that's the beauty of this amazing pyramid model community that exists internationally now as well. So Sally and I both work for the Minnesota Centers of Excellence for Young Children with Disabilities. That is the project that rolls out pyramid model implementation here in Minnesota. And Sally and I are fortunate to have unique roles in that we not only get to support implementation sites as an external coach, but we also get to support the statewide scale up sustainability and support implementation throughout the state. So we're just going to share with you some of our lessons learned specific to a couple of topics that Barbara and Ben asked for us to touch on today. Next slide, please, Ben. So this shows the pyramid model growth here in Minnesota since the pyramid model first came to us officially in 2010. Back then it was referred to as TAXI, but we started out with 3 implementation sites during our very first year, and we have now grown to 87 sites throughout the state that have been trained and coached. And so you'll notice that we have slow, steady progress throughout the last decade or so. One thing that you may notice on this graph is that starting in the year 2014 and specifically 2015, we have quite a few there's quite a few fewer new sites that are coming on to partner with us in pyramid model implementation. That is the year that we formally adopted and started using implementation science and practice-based coaching here in Minnesota. Those have been game changers for us. We have drank the implementation science Kool-Aid, and we start to apply it to all of our work now. And practice-based coaching has been a game changer, like I said, in getting those practices implemented to Fidelity and making that big difference for our youngest little learners. So this growth chart really just shows that it is slow and steady progress. And while 87 out of almost 300 school districts and programs here in Minnesota may seem like we're not quite there yet. Yeah, we're not there, but we're making slow, steady growth. And that's only done through lessons learned. Okay, next slide, please, Ben. So as I shared, Sally and I are both external coaches. In Minnesota, we have 12 external coaches that are assigned geographically throughout the entire state of Minnesota. So every single school district and their inclusion partners in their community are assigned an external coach. And we as an external coach are there to support programs from their first conversations where they're exploring the pyramid model, all the way through installation and full scale up and implementation and sustainability. Our job is to support each and every role at the implementation site level to help them reflect on what's working, to help them reflect on where they want to go, and to help them action plan based on what their responsibilities are on their role. And so we really work directly with programs to help them think about what their coaching structure development should look like. What do we want coaching to look like in your program? We help teams create their data system. And not only do we help them create their data, we don't want to ask them for data that we're not going to help them use. And so we engage in very intentional efforts, going back to Katasha's key word there, so much intentionality in helping programs use the data that we're asking them to collect. And then the last bullet on here is just emphasizing we want to help teams create written implementation and sustainability plans. Next slide, please, Ben. Thinking about implementation and sustainability plans, we start talking about that with teams from the very beginning. This slide here is a summary of the exploration activities that we go to when programs come to us and say, hey, we heard about the pyramid model, we want to learn more, and we might want to join the bandwagon and join the efforts with statewide scale up. In order to do that, they have a minimum of 3 to 4 meetings with their external coach, in addition to many of their staff at their site level, to figure out, is this the right time? Is it the right fit? Do we have the resources in place to be able to make this work right now? And if the answer is no, that's okay. We're going to support you to eventually get there. But this also has made a huge impact on scale up of the pyramid model in Minnesota. It helps us really identify those sites that are ready to take it and run with it. And if they're not, like I said, we're going to support them to get there. But we have a series of meetings that are highlighted on this slide that we do to support teams in reflecting on, are we ready or are we not? Okay, one more slide, please, Ben. And then I'm going to turn it over to Sally to close us out here. So this slide here is just summarizing what a sustainability plan for a program might look like. We actually have programs include a sustainability plan in their application to become a pyramid model site. We want to support programs in having those conversations to think about what's it going to take over the course of 5+ years to get you to full program-wide implementation and sustainability. So we're going to help you think through, if your goal is to do this in 5 years, how many classrooms do you want to start coaching in year 1? How many coaches are you going to need to support those classrooms that are implementing? How many behavior coaches are you going to need? What funding are you going to need? And so we just help programs think through from the beginning, knowing that there's likely going to be change over the course of 5 years to this plan. We want to make sure they're intentionally thinking about how they're going to build and create structures and systems that will last. Okay, next slide, and I am going to turn it over to Sally Hansen.
Thanks, Hope. So I'll talk a little bit about some of the core features that we provide as a state in order to support programs in that sustainability. So for us, the training of pyramid model practices, of data use, and of practice-based coaching is something we provide at no cost to all of our partner sites until death do us part. So as long as MNCO exists, as long as folks are engaging in the work, they can come to our trainings and expect consistent, reliable, high quality, adult learning driven training. New this year, since COVID, we've had the opportunity to try out Zoom training. And whether we love it or hate it, doesn't matter. It provides more equitable access across the state. And so moving forward, we used some data to decide that I think it was something like 62% of people would like to have face-to-face training, and 40% would like virtual, and 8% don't know what they want. And so we're going to go ahead and offer training moving forward in both formats. And so for us, our trainers are statewide trainers. Hope oversees the trainers for Pyramid Model. They are trained by our program, by MNCO. They use our materials, our training activities. We have new trainers paired with veteran trainers, and there's all kinds of support that's provided at the MNCO level with meetings beforehand and follow-up surveys, so that we can ensure in Minnesota, regardless of if you're in a tiny little spot in northern Minnesota or you're in the metro, you're getting access to a consistent training experience, so that we know for sure everyone has that same equitable access to the material. So on the next slide, we'll talk about coaching. And for us, we use coaching in Minnesota. We use practice-based coaching, as Hope mentioned, and that has been a complete game changer. I am overseeing our practice-based coaching trainers. So in a similar fashion, we provide practice-based coaching training several times each year in several regions of the state and online. In addition to coaching training, we support our internal coaches. So we're building that capacity at the program level. My job as an external coach is to support my internal coach. So I'm going to go out and do a teapot with her the first time. I'm going to have a conversation, a planning conversation with him or her before her first coaching session. And then I'm going to fade my support as he or she becomes more confident. We provide recorded webinars are available on various topics to support our internal coaches. And then we also borrowed a great idea from our friends in Wisconsin and started coaching cohorts this year. The one strand of coaching cohorts is just digging deeper into the practices. Coaches come together virtually and talk about different pieces: action planning, focused observations, reflecting on the feedback process. And then the other cohort we're running is around the Pyramid Model Coaching Equity Guide. And so folks are having that opportunity to learn together how to use that equity lens in their coaching. And the way we support coaching in Minnesota is, again, that sort of most to least approach. And so we have our Coaching to Fidelity plan on the screen. Essentially, what we want to do is match the amount of coaching a practitioner receives to the amount they need. It's professional development. So until you've mastered that, those teapot practices, you're going to get twice a month coaching. And then once you master it, once a month. And then once you've mastered it twice, just as needed. And that's how we try to scale out of coaching so that other folks have that opportunity. Go ahead and flip the slide forward. As everyone here has talked about, we have a whole bunch of data nerds in the audience today, or at least on the panel. We'll give Barbara and the team at NCPMI credit for turning us all into data lovers. So for us, we have a system in Minnesota. We had a great investment by the Department of Education to create what we call the Minnesota Innovation Implementation Data System. And that system is online. It's completely dynamic. So coaches can enter their teapot scores, their coaching logs. We can enter benchmarks of quality and instantly have access to those beautiful charts and graphs for using that look, think, act process. Look, think, act is our best friend in Minnesota. We use it all the time to engage in database decision-making. We like it because it's 3 words and it's an easy process that we can all remember. So what we provide our data managers is training on the system. And then we also provide training on how to use the information. What are the questions we should ask? And what are some possible outcomes? And we'd be happy to share some of the resources we've developed to guide those programs. I think Hope put a link in the chat box already. So you can go ahead and move it forward. And then the last thing that we wanted to share is that in response to teams asking for time to learn from each other, to work together, we have created a sustainability planning day in Minnesota that we repeat annually. We offer it regionally. Teams can do it on their own if they prefer. Every external coach has access to the information. We've created an implementation and sustainability workbook that's full of questions to consider about each core component of implementation at the program level. We walk folks through the questions. We share examples of how other teams have met those items. And then we give them time to decide, where are we now, where do we want to go, and how are we going to get there. We think about it a little bit in terms of a path process, planning alternative tomorrows with hope, not hope the person, hope the feeling. And we walk through that with teams. It's an optional planning day. We don't call it a training because they work harder than we do. But we do like to give teams that time to reflect on, where are you now and where do you want to go in your sustainability journey. And then the last slide I have is just a little plug. We're going to do this show in length at NTI in the spring, and I can't wait to see old friends and make new friends. And we hope that you'll consider stopping by. Even if you just want to stop by and grab resources, we'll do that, won't we, hope? And that's it from Minnesota, unless you have any questions or need anything from us. And thank you for letting us be part of the conversation today.
Well, we're so grateful for each of you joining us. And either Victor or I are going to plug NTI 2022, a place where you can see people if you're one of the 60-some% in Minnesota, or whatever percent across nationally that like to do things in person. We're so grateful for the opportunity. If you can get a chance to join us in April 2022, head on down to Tampa, and if there's spots left, plug them in. It's going to fill up quickly if it hasn't already completely filled up.
Thank you very much to our panelists for their wonderful insights. Your feedback is very important to the work that we do. Please remember to provide your feedback on this webinar with our post-webinar survey by typing the web address shown on this slide into your internet browser. Your certificate of attendance will appear once you submit the survey. We invite you to visit our website, challengingbehavior.org, to sign up for our upcoming webinars, access recordings, download pyramid model resources, and more. Thank you to our funder for making this webinar possible. This concludes our webinar. Thank you all and have a great rest of your day.